Watch this.
Last year's budget for Medicaid was more than the actual budget for the entire state 10 years ago.
So, in an effort to shrink that budget, lawmakers are trying to shrink the list of those who qualify for the health care coverage. But the bill to do that got stuck. Are gender and sex the same thing? The bill to define them that way in Idaho code is moving forward, but what does that mean to those who aren't defined so simply? Sure, the snow this season could be better, but at least we aren't looking at what they were looking at in the winter of '77. It was totally bogus. But even Brundage was suffering from not enough snow. The latest effort from fiscal conservatives fell short of the finish. The House Health and Welfare is holding House Bill 419. The bill would attach additional conditions to Idaho's Medicaid program. Idaho Department of Health and Welfare, which runs the program in the state, already has the second largest budget behind education. And it's only gotten bigger since Idaho voters overwhelmingly approved Medicaid expansion in 2018. Expansion was to provide health care coverage for people who didn't already qualify for it and also could not afford their own private health plan. Medicaid expansion is a $1 billion program. And Republicans say it is time to trim the fat. But supporters of expanding it say that's just a disguise for the actual goal, which is to repeal the expansion entirely. Here's Andrew Bartline.
The bills piling up at the Idaho State House can feel like a shuffled deck of cards. But some in the majority party are concerned about what they call a house of cards.
It's a much larger issue than just Medicaid, truly.
Representative Jordan Redmond may as well be the pit boss.
Well, because our current national debt is $30+ trillion, and at some point you can't pay the interest on that.
So his interest today is tied up in the $1 billion that funds Idaho's Medicaid expansion.
Last year's budget for Medicaid was more than the actual budget for the entire state 10 years ago.
To cut the cost, the bill has multiple mandates, including a work requirement for able-bodied enrollees, capping expansion at 50,000 people, an eligibility review every 2 years, and the rejection of gender reassignment surgery with these public dollars.
To make sure that we have our Medicaid program in place for those that truly do need it, and putting some sideboards on the department and on our program so that we can continue it long term.
But in public testimony?
Yes, I was just going to say, I just don't find any winners in this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The people picked out the sponsor as a card shark.
Yes, pointing the finger.
And Jeff Faraday wants to cut the debt.
A sleight of hand. It's an attempt to pull the wool over the voters' eyes in Idaho.
If all conditions are not approved by the federal government and implemented by July 2025, the bill would repeal Medicaid expansion entirely.
They are absolutely setting it up for repeal because they know those sideboards and guardrails will be rejected.
Idaho isn't the first state to try and make rules to cap the pot, meaning legally, it's a gamble.
No other state has succeeded in getting the federal government to sign off on the exact same requests that this bill puts forward.
Luke Mayville spearheaded Idaho's Medicaid expansion in 2018.
Remarkable that some of our legislators keep coming back to try to subvert the will of the voters.
The federal government covers 90% of Idaho's Medicaid expansion budget, and supporters say its repeal would actually cost the state money.
The bottom line is this bill is bad for the people of Idaho, and it's also bad for taxpayers.
Both sides agree the money on the table isn't free.
Let's bring our own money back to serve our own people.
But someone has to feed the pot.
Current trajectory, we're not going to be able to sustain it.
While the cards didn't fall his way today in committee.
House Bill 419 will be held in committee.
And amid the raising accusations,
Medicaid expansion will just vanish.
Representative Redmond says he's playing a straight hand.
Yeah, I heard that a lot. Simply not true. This truly was for guardrails. Honestly, if we hit all those guardrails, we would keep expansion and it would save significantly more than if we would have repealed it. So as a fiscal conservative, of course I would rather have that and keep it.
with the bill held, Chairman Vander Woude can bring it back up when or if he decides it's time to do so. He did pitch a bill last session to control Medicaid spending. That was the goal of it. It didn't move very far, but we do know, with that being at the very least, the committee has an appetite to do something about Medicaid. Several organizations, Brian, opposed this bill, including organizations like the American Cancer Society, I believe was one of them.
Okay.
An interesting piece of this, like the work requirement. If somebody has cancer, well, they might not qualify for Medicaid because you're able-bodied, you should be working.
Unless you're getting treatment for cancer.
Well, if you're getting treatment for cancer, you're probably not able to work.
Right.
That was the argument some people had made today.
Okay, so as you mentioned there, not the first time that somebody's tried to put quote-unquote guardrails on this and try to change it up, but like last time, it's kind of stalled for now. So we'll see how that plays out. Thank you, Andrew. Republican Representative Julianne Young's brought her self-proclaimed word girl status to the House State Affairs Committee, Joseph. She did this yesterday to kind of answer questions from her committee colleagues and to listen to people who had something to say about her attempt to make the word sex synonymous with gender in Idaho code, even though dictionaries define them as distinct terms. Representative Young, who told the committee she had input from the Heritage Foundation and Alliance Defending Freedom to rewrite these definitions, well, includes in the first line of the bill, under the legislative intent, she says, quote, in human beings, there are two and only two sexes, male and female, even though most modern biologists believe the spectrum is bigger than that. Okay, so Joe, how was this received in committee today?
Well, as you can imagine by the final vote, Brian, lawmakers, they liked it enough to get it passed the full House on a party line vote, though, with the Democrats in the House State Affairs voting no. Public testimony, though, was heavily slanted to agree with the minority party. In fact, there was only public testimony this week from people against this idea. And there were certainly people who believe that the change is an attack on transgender Idahoans, people who don't fit being strictly male or female. Another point was made about the legislation. What about people that are born intersex? Does Idaho law simply ignore them? Public testimony at the Idaho State House can be a window into lives that are not ours, experiences we haven't had, life lived uniquely. Sydney Madsen entered the public testimony arena this week, testifying to the critical issues that she sees with House Bill 421.
I'm a TikToker, so I make plenty of videos about being intersex.
That term, intersex, it's something that Sydney believes that House Bill 421 completely ignores. The legislation, according to bill sponsor Representative Julianne Young, is meant to clarify words like male and female, tied to the reproductive system of a person.
Having clear definitions is critical to our ability to both communicate and to craft policy.
Legislative intent in the bill says that in human beings there are two and only two sexes, male and female. Goes on to define terms like male, female, mother, father in Idaho State Code based on biological and reproductive attributes. It specifies gender is a synonym for sex, not gender identity. Sydney is intersex. That is a term for people, very generally, that are born with a combination of male and female biological traits. And there are several different intersex conditions.
It's highly nuanced, and that's the most accurate description. Non-binary categories are very effective because it's cheaper to enforce law in that way. It's easier to exercise power in that way, but it's not scientifically accurate, and it does a lot of harm to people's bodies and their lives by trying to force them into binary categories that really have no place in the law anyways.
Through TikTok, Sydney has shared her journey of learning more about herself and the term intersex, all while educating millions of people.
Well, I thought I was sharing a funny story about my body being different. I didn't recognize that to be intersex was controversial. It was a term that I wasn't quite familiar with. But the more that I discussed it and got questions about it, the more that I researched and found that this is a vital topic and one that deserves, a lot more attention and rights right now.
So when Sydney saw a proposed law that puts into code only two defined groups, and she isn't a part of either of them, it raised a major red flag.
There is no surgery, there is no medical treatment that will make your body not biologically intersex if that is the way that you were born. And to endeavor in treatments that will force someone into a binary rather than endeavor in treatments that support that individual's health are wrong. And this bill is implementing language to try to force medical treatments outside of what I would consider to be good faith.
Another line of the bill made Idahoans like Sydney feel like they just don't exist in Idaho law. Rare disorders of sexual development are not exceptions to the binary nature of sex. I would imagine that that's something that raised a flag to you.
Well, I think if that If we would like to enforce that such a rare condition should not be recognized with legitimacy and given respect and rights, then it's about time that we stop giving rights and respect to those with green eyes as well. Because both intersex populations and green-eyed people make up approximately 2% of the global population. And there's plenty of reputable research to support that. So while I don't think we should be stripping the rights from either of these populations, I say that if we are going to go after intersex people, we have to start looking at other 2% populations as well.
So again, the proposed bill did pass in committee on a party line vote. It heads to the full House of Representatives and will likely have a vote on the floor next week. Brian, I just want to talk about some of the feedback I got from the testimony in the actual hearing yesterday. There was Idahoans that truly believe that the lawmakers on this committee didn't understand what they were talking about. They didn't understand what was being described to them. And when I spoke with Sydney about, being intersex and kind of the nuances there, she also said, I felt like maybe the lawmakers on the committee, they didn't understand or they didn't get what I was saying. So it does show this very, I guess, delicate nature at the legislature of these high-level topics that are scientific in nature, and Julianne Young wants to make them about lexicon. So it's a whole world of ideas that you're trying to work through.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point about green-eyed people that she made there. And Julianne, Representative Young made it a point of saying this isn't about policy, this is about clarification, as she said. But I guess the question would be like that. Maybe it could be used to direct policy, because a lot of people have brought up, what about your gender marker on your driver's license? Excuse me.
Right. And then this also, we heard people from the transgender community that also say these binaries of one thing or the other is not how I self-identify. And I saw one person say in committee, they said, to you guys, this may be simplifying a word or simplifying a code. To us, this is our identity. So it means a lot. So we'll see where this progresses. Again, it should be on the House floor next week.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that. Thanks, Joe. The hangar that collapsed last night, killing 3 people and injuring 9 others, fell because of an unknown structural failure. Now OSHA is taking over that investigation. Abby Davis has the latest information on that and more in today's 411.
Boise Fire says 3 people are dead and 9 are injured after a Jackson Jet Center hangar under construction collapsed last night. 5 of those 9 are in critical condition. The incident happened at West Rickenbacker and Luke Streets on Boise Airport property. Inland Crane, who works on the project, says the building collapsed because of an unknown structural failure, which snapped the arm of the crane on impact. The city of Boise says emergency response is done. OSHA took over the investigation. The Ada County Coroner's Office will release the names of the people who died once their families are notified. The city says Wright Street between West Rickenbacker Street and Orchard Street are closed because of the investigation. You can find the latest info on our website, ktvb.com. The Oregon Supreme Court says 10 Republican senators can't run for re-election after walking out of the state capitol for 6 weeks last session. The group wanted to stall bills on gun rights, abortion, and transgender health care. The Supreme Court says it made the decision because voters approved a constitutional amendment in 2022, which banned lawmakers from running for re-election if they had more than 10 unexcused absences. The Secretary of State also disqualified those senators from running for re-election under that new law last year.
There's a saying that you're not supposed to kiss and tell, but with Zoo Boise's Name a Cockroach program, we encourage people to hiss and tell.
Doesn't that just scream love? This Valentine's Day, for just $20, you can name one of Zoo Boise's Madagascar hissing cockroaches for your loved one or hated one. Pick your poison. You'll get a certificate emailed that you can give to your Valentine. All the money raised will go toward the zoo's capital campaign to improve the zoo. That's the 411 on the 208. I'm Abby Davis.
We can thank the 70s for the birth of bell-bottoms and disco, styles that seem to come and go. What always seems to be in fashion? Blaming the weather person for bad weather, an expression on full display during a certain McCall Winter Carnival. You remember skiing in 1977? Likely not very much. You can tell us about it, or you can tell us about how you like the show so far. Get in touch with us by texting the number on your screen, 208-321-5614. Always include your name and the hashtag #the208. Every first of the month, National Weather Service in Boise compiles all the data for the month before. Temps, precip, that kind of stuff, to see how it compares to other years. Well, today, February 1st, they released the data for the first month of 2024. And January 2024 couldn't really nail down an identity. It was the 4th snowiest January on record, the 7th snowiest month ever, with more than 22 inches collected out at the Boise airport, nearly 17 inches more than usual. But it was also one of the warmest months, like top 2 Januaries. We wrapped up the month with 3 record-setting days, including the warmest high temperature ever in January, which was 66 degrees, which we hit yesterday. Well, 47 years ago, it was quite the opposite. January 1977 was top 10 for one of the coldest months. But when it came to snow, not so much, as we were reminded by a picture posted to social media yesterday. The end of January 1977. Idaho Governor John Evans.
I, John B. Evans, do solemnly swear.
Joined President Jimmy Carter as just having been sworn in.
The office of President of the United States.
Good grief, what am I doing here? That's not my voice.
Disney had the top spot at the box office.
Something really freaky.
And Stevie Wonder topped the charts with a song called I Wish. Meanwhile, the residents of McCall, well, they were wishing for some actual freaking winter to celebrate their winter carnival. Gary Erder posted this picture of the annual Mardi Gras parade the last weekend of January 1977. Notice the lack of snow, which is why some guy named Johnny had the idea for a parade entry to blame KTVB's Susan Eby and to hang her in effigy from the back of a beat-up International Harvester. I mean, to celebrate winter's doldrums, there's usually some signs of winter around. So how bad was January 1977? Well, the month before, December 1976, was the driest ever recorded in Boise at less than an inch. Snow on the ground was less than 30% of average in area mountains. How's this for perspective? Right now, at Bogus Basin's official site, there's 46 inches of snow. On February 1st, 1977, it measured only 11. So you could see why the winter carnival goers were looking to blame someone, like the weather gal, and wishing for more winter-like conditions. Look, weather gal was Gary's term, not mine. I know that's not what we call them. The snow was snow low that winter of 76, 77. Brundage didn't open for skiing until January 8th. By the way, the McCall Winter Carnival this year has been consolidated into 3 days instead of 10 and pushed back to the last weekend of February, which is kind of how they did it back in 1964 when the carnival was restarted. So I guess the question is for you, Sophia, what can we blame on you today?
Ooh, well, I guess you can kind of take your pick. We had the record snow, record cold, record warmth. I guess it's kind of open to interpretation. But, you know, I don't know. After watching that, I'm suddenly not feeling so good. I might have to go home pretty shortly. Maybe, you know, won't be here tomorrow. But I guess I shouldn't have started out with McCall and talking about how we got rain today on that snow. But we are expecting more moisture to come back in the picture for us. But you can see the clouds have been making it feel quite gray across those mountain areas. And sticking with the mountains, we also saw 5 inches of fresh snow over in Sun Valley. So today the snow is favoring some of those central mountain spots, but it is a heavy, wet snow, not the typical snow that we like for the skiers and snowboarders. But you can see a lot of that moisture streaming up from the south, continuing to envelop the region. We've seen some of those stronger showers starting to move in valley locations like Mountain Home, and we expect this to continue in the overnight hours because we'll have a continuous source of that moisture coming up from the south as an atmospheric river continues to shift towards the east. But you can see some of those accumulations have been quite light thus far. Highest total that I have seen across the map is Ontario, not even 1/10 of an inch thus far. So pretty dry, but we do expect the intensity to pick up as a cold front starts to move through the area. That should happen in some of those western areas a little bit closer to 8 or 9 o'clock tonight. Those, again, rain showers will intensify as the front continues to shift to the east, but also with that cold front, you'll see colder temperatures, which will mean more snow for the mountains. So it's good for the mountains. We'll see the snow level drop to 5,000 to 6,000 feet, and then we continue to see some of those showers linger throughout Friday, but getting a little bit more isolated in nature. But mountains, again, seeing those consistent snow shower chances throughout the weekend. And as we looked for your 7-day forecast, those temperatures a little more on the mild side, but we do dip back towards freezing. On Sunday morning, we'll see a cooling trend all the way until Sunday morning. And then Monday and Tuesday, we start to see things warm back up a little bit in those valley locations. And those rain chances will be sticking with you throughout your 7-day forecast.
Trying to expand a little bit more time here at the end of the show to get as many comments in as we can. Let's see if we can do that today. Roger in Boise says this about Medicaid expansion in Idaho. Government for the legislature, of the legislature, and by the legislature. Sorry, folks, you have no place or respect in their arena. Similar sentiments from a couple other people like David in Boise. Best way to get a bill passed in Idaho is for everyone to voice against that in the legislature. As usual, most GOP legislators continue to totally ignore the testimony of Idaho citizens who are not in favor of the bills they propose in the committees. It seems like legislators have decided ahead of time which bills will make it to the floor. That's what Steve says. And they keep telling us they get all these emails, and we've asked for several of them to kind of verify what they mean by that. We'll see if we can share some of those with you as we get into, well, either tomorrow or maybe next week. Joe, a gazillion thanks for the interview with the young intersex person. Idaho legislators continue to show their ignorance of science in favor of extremist notions. That's a big arg from Cecil in Meridian. What problem is being solved with the gender definition bill? Many will be created for it or by it for sure, says Jack in Boise. As we mentioned, Representative Young says she's just trying to clarify some things, but yes, it does open up a few doors when it comes to policy, even though she says that's not the intent. Please stop trying to confuse our legislators with actual science. Fittingly, that comes in from Darwin today. Good point. Is your reporting indicating that laws must be fashioned to meet the needs of one person or a small group of the population? The individual in your report is a small percentage of the 1.9 million citizens of Idaho to be about 1.7%. Should we also ignore just the 11% of black people that live in Idaho, or do they not get a say in how things are run? We'll see you tomorrow.